despite all of the problems that the industry has had over the last year or two, there are still tons and tons of people who want to work in the industry, and they still want to make creative things, and they still love what they do, even if the industry doesn't love them back.
Welcome to The Format by Chorus Studios. Technology is always changing, and so is the format, or how we produce and consume media. The Format is a monthly newsletter on Substack and a podcast, where I, Flo of Chorus Studios, talk to you, producers, co-hosts, founders, about the newest and the best practices in podcasting today and tomorrow. From technique to technology, we will explore what new AI tools are podcasters using and why. How to prep for a podcast interview as a host or a guest. Which mics are best for your budget? And even, what happens in your brain when you listen to a podcast? These are all questions I will be asking on The Format. This series will allow me an opportunity to continue learning and growing as a podcast producer and share those learnings with you. So I hope you'll join me on The Format on Substack. We've got our coffee.
It's tea, but, you know.
Oh, okay.
Black
Nice.
tea. Caffeinated.
I also raised my desk, so now I'm standing.
I copied you. So I'm also now standing.
Yes, there's got to be science to back the fact that, and I don't know, you do on-camera presence work. Do you believe that standing gives like a better energy to the person speaking or presenting?
Yeah, I think it helps you get unstuck, even if it's just a little bit up. But just like standing up totally changes the energy. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets you in your body, and it like lets your blood flow. Lauren and I have been really good friends for many years now, about four or five.
Since COVID, yeah.
We met via yoga and outdoor yoga during COVID
That's right.
in Raleigh.
Trying to stay sane and
Trying
healthy.
to stay sane and became friends. And do you want to share a little bit about your professional path you've been on the last couple of years?
Yeah, sure. And it's funny because you and I both were born and raised in like Raleigh area and didn't know each other until our adult life. But I am from North Carolina. I went to NC State and then had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I luckily landed a job at a tech company in Raleigh, Red Hat, that really took off, and worked in leadership development primarily there, did program management and coaching. And yeah, I left that job about a year ago to do part 2 of career life, which I'm still piecing together. But a big piece of that is Better On, which I love. We worked with them at Red Hat, which is where that connection started. It's really cool to help people just with their presence using video as a tool. It's great for Zoom and how everyone's working these days, but it translates to real life as well, right? It's like camera's such a great tool for seeing how you show up in a lot of different scenarios. So that's been a lot of fun. And that's somewhat connected to podcast world because of the rise of video recently, over the past few years anyway, and podcasting. So you and I have connected on that recently. And then you were sweet enough to invite me to jump in and start working with Chorus Studios some too. So that's been super fun.
Yeah. Excuse to hang out and do cool shit. Well, what do you guys do at Better On? Do you guys do warm-ups?
Well, basically anything they're doing is kind of a warm up before recording something that's like a big deal for them. So, and that was the advice Bree gave me. She's like, yeah, Lauren, it helps everybody like do a few takes before you consider it your really start, because it's so hard to just drop in unless you're really good. But even still, even the best athletes warm up.
I like that.
So,
That's a good reminder.
Yeah. What would your warm up be real fast? Like, yeah, what would you make me do if I was your
Standing up.
guest? Okay.
Optional play music or not.
I like
but
that.
But I think some it doesn't have to be like legit jumping jacks, but like some kind of like full body movement.
Move the body. And it's like so vocal podcasting. So
Oh,
Is there anything
great.
you would do with the voice specifically?
Red, yellow, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red
Red
leather,
leather,
yellow
yellow
leather.
leather, red yellow leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. That's so hard. But that's fun because then it's like, it's just fun.
It's just funny, yeah. It's
Yeah.
hard. We used to do that in singing. Reps.
I like
Yeah, I
that.
think
Breath, move your body, get your like tongue, mouth, voice moving.
yeah.
And then I'm sure it's good too just to ask people like, how are you feeling? Like you're so good at that anyway, but just how are you feeling today? Like what's going on with you? It's like we're in a space now where everything else is on pause and we're get to be here for an hour and
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And talk
Yeah.
about fun things. So,
Yeah.
Lauren, you came with me to New York and we went to On Air Fest.
Yes, it was awesome.
It was awesome. Was it what you expected?
I wasn't sure what to expect other than most things I go to in the city are so fun and eclectic and creative. So that part I was expecting and that definitely delivered. But other than that, I was just going with the flow. You're going with flow, you.
Yeah.
I had almost assumed you had been before or to any podcasting conference before, but this was your first soiree. Yeah.
I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that because everybody I know is like going to podcasting conferences and festivals all the time, but I haven't. But now that I'm feeling more momentum in my business, it was so fun to go meet other producers and learn from them. And also now that I have the format, this podcast, it makes even more sense because we're exploring the art, the methodology, the storytelling, the technology, anything and everything that goes into podcasting today and tomorrow.
Right. So you were in great company there, obviously. And then even with you, it didn't feel like you were just an attendee as much either because you were also there to get content.
Yeah, always be, it was like ABC, always be selling, always be creating content. If you're a content creator. But it was also just a cool opportunity for me because I really do enjoy interviewing other producers and creatives on the format. And it can be hard to get to certain people when they don't know who you are, like in a moment where you're free and you can do a 5-minute, 10-minute interview. And I wanted to see if we could take advantage of that. And once we got our setup, I mean, it was my fault. I was so, like, talk about running and gunning. I bought the Hollyland mics and got them like the day before and then got there on Thursday and I didn't know how to use them yet. So then by Friday, I was like, okay, we're ready to go.
It was
For me.
surprising almost how receptive people were because I know everyone's there and busy and also engaged in the conference and the talks they want to see, but I found everyone to be so friendly, kind, and willing to talk about talk about what they love about podcasting, right? Like their experience and their favorite podcasts. I was impressed by how willing folks were to chat with us.
I agree. I was glad to be met with that energy. I think it's just people like to be together in person, you know, and the other thing that's great about On Air is it was small enough that it felt like a little community that you kept running into the same people versus like a really big conference or festival where you don't run into the same people very much necessarily.
Right. You feel like you made friends by the end of it, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So some people I met Thursday, I got to interview with you on Friday. And actually the person that I'm speaking of, was the first interview. And that was Ben Robbins. He is the founder of Sound Insights.
Yeah. Well, I was really impressed by learning about his background. So going a little further back in his history, he worked at NPR for 13 years, and then moved on to be the global senior director for research at Audible for the past 8 years. And it sounded like that's where he came from most recently at Audible to start his company. And the description is guiding audio commissioners, producers, and marketers to create the next must listen. And he provides guidance to enhance top performing productions.
Shall we listen to the interview?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Between two states, have you seen that? So, introduce yourself, Ben.
Am I? I'm looking here. Okay. Ben Robbins. I'm the founder of Sound Insights, and we're a research agency, the first in the world to help audio creatives make the next must listen.
Cool. So just tell me about your background in the audio industry.
I've worked 25 years, all client side, working for some of the best audio producers in the world. Award-winning shows at NPR, at BBC World Service, and at Audible. And basically what I do is to help creatives understand the listener perspective and take a step back from what they're creating and really think about what is it the audience wants to listen to.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I also have clients. We both have clients now, and bringing them into this world is a bit of a process at times. But it sounds like your experience is really helping you do that.
Yeah, so there's two types of people that I work with. The ones that really want to hear about the audience and what they need. And then there's the other type, which is much harder, where they think they've got the best understanding of how to do good audio. And so you try to meet them in the middle, try not to change everything, but also help them understand it better too.
All right, quick question here. What was the first podcast that you loved?
Probably Serial, I would say. From where I was, to hear that story and to have everyone be able to relate to it, everyone could connect with different elements of the story. I just thought it was the breakthrough moment for the medium, but it made a big impact on me.
Couple rapid fire questions. Narrative or interview style?
I would say interview style.
Audio only or video and audio?
Both, audio and video.
Famous host or host you've never heard of?
Really depends on who that person is, but I've seen it go well and badly both ways.
Other ideas for rapid fire questions?
What did you learn at the conference?
I'm sorry?
What did you learn at the conference?
The NASA session at the beginning yesterday was really peculiar, but to see the astronaut talk about the art and the producer talk about the science, I thought it worked pretty well. I wasn't sure where they were going, but it was a good session.
There you have it. Thank you, Ben. Well, I thought it was nice that he said he likes the interview style, because most people we interviewed said narrative or fiction, and that he also loves Serial, the podcast.
You guys were the only two.
Who liked Serial?
Jokes. Yeah.
Oh.
We talked to a lot of people who liked Serial.
What did you think about his business that he's working on?
I thought it was really interesting. I liked his data-backed, like more science perspective and background of really researching your audience and understanding your audience before creating something. I know that's almost counterintuitive to creatives probably, but I think you can use both, right? It can be both and not either or. So I'm sure what he's putting out there is extremely valuable for people producing any media, but podcasts specifically.
Yeah, I'm super curious about it, to be honest. I was looking at his LinkedIn and the titles he's held as was it called consumer research or audience research, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, it's such a big company like Audible or
NPR.
Even NPR. It's just an area that I don't know anything about that would be enlightening to hear more about. And
I would have loved, maybe in the future they could do this, a conversation on stage between him and other people in the research field, and then the woman we heard talk who runs National Sawdust.
Yeah.
She's an artist, and her takeaway was her main message was a little bit of the opposite of Ben's around the place she runs shouldn't necessarily exist. No one is there saying this place has to be here, but she feels so strongly about providing a unique space in the city that it's more of a passion and a necessity for her, not fed by audience input.
Here's a short clip from the conversation at the event with Paula Prestini, co-founder of National Sawdust and internationally renowned classical composer, about her journey creating this amazing music venue.
In the venue, or whether it's creating a piece of music, it's pretty much the minute I put my mind to doing something, it's like this discovery of what I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that composers, we're used to building things out of nothing. We're comfortable with abstraction. And I think that when you're trying to create things that don't exist, you have to be comfortable with what it's going to become. You can't over control it. And that's the same thing with the menu. Like, I had no money. I wasn't a famous composer. I didn't know it was going to, I mean, I knew it was going to exist because I thought it would. But the truth was,
So I would love to hear a discussion between the two of them.
Me too. That would be, because I think there's validity to both. And
Totally.
how do you hold both truths at the same time?
Yeah, both and. It's always more complicated that way, but usually more effective.
Yes. So Ben was our first interview, which was nice because I'd met him at lunch the day before. But after this, I think we interviewed mostly people I had not met before. The next person I recognized from LinkedIn, Chioke, he is the founder of Resonate Podcast Festival in Richmond, Virginia, which I was supposed to go to, but I got sick. And he was really lovely to do a random hallway interview with us. And
Well, I was super impressed with his background too. He is so cool and also just so smart. He is the director of community media at the Institute for Contemporary Art at Virginia Commonwealth University, and then an underwriting voice for NPR. I learned that his podcast conference was one of the more successful ones out there. I hear it gets sold out. I was impressed with him.
he was definitely a good guest. All right, let's hear it. We're here today with Chioke, the founder of Resonate, and he's agreed to answer a couple questions. But we're at On Air Fest. Have you come here before?
Yeah, I came here last year and was like amazed at all the stuff that was happening. It was a whirlwind.
What is your favorite part about this festival?
Well, first off, everyone is here. So there's like a lot of new people to meet and a lot of old friends. And obviously, like, the community that gathers is the fundamental cornerstone of any festival. And like, this is a very cool community that's got a little bit of everybody. You know what I mean? Like the indie producers, the very famous people, like it's all like, that's pretty dope. And then there's something for everybody. Like, it'd be very difficult to not find something that you like didn't love.
Right. But you founded Resonate, which everyone is also in love with. And everyone's telling me I'm really missed out because I didn't make it this year. What was the inspiration for that festival, and what did you work to do with that event?
So I'm an educator. Like, I was a professor for many years. And so the thing that I really wanted was like a festival that could be a conference, but like a conference that's not boring. And that was the idea behind Resonate. So I wanted something to be maximally educational, but also maximally entertaining.
I have heard that it is the place to go if you are really creative and you want to create art with your audio work and you want to push the boundaries of the art form.
Yeah, a lot of the presentations are like the how-to stuff. It's like the craft conversations. And that's like just about everything that happens. And so it definitely feels a little bit like, you know, a summer school session. You know what I mean?
Very cool. So I have a Substack pod blog, I call it, on it's on Substack. It's called The Format, and I'm going to be putting these interviews on there. And it's about the art of podcasting. So I really should go to Resonate.
Yes, please come to Resonate. It's this year, November 7th and 8th. Tickets go on sale July 1st at 12 p.m.
And folks, that's very important to note because they did sell out in 2 hours last year.
Yes, and we worry about how long tickets will be available this year. So please log in as soon as you can. Get your tickets.
A couple quick rapid fire questions. You had to choose a narrative or interview podcast.
Narrative, hands down.
What was one of the first podcasts that made you realize you loved the medium?
Ages ago, I was in my Nissan Sentra, and I was listening to This American Life, but that day, the whole episode was Scott Carrier, and that was the first time that I just like sat in the car in the parking lot and just listened to the whole thing. And that was the moment that I knew.
What did you know then?
That there's something specifically good about audio storytelling. The fact that it's like a medium that you hear but can't see means that a lot of the initial judgments that you might make about someone are gone. And that means that there's like a little bit of extra openness whenever you listen to something that maybe you don't have whenever you can like see and judge a thing from afar. And that entryway, like that opening, I think makes for closer storytelling.
It's funny. My next rapid fire question was here. Let's go over here. My next rapid fire question was audio only or audio and video?
Audio only. I don't know what people are even looking at, but I mean, I do, like it's dope because I think that there's like a pattern of usage, and I think that we all have to be mindful of what the patterns of usage are. But I think it's also okay to dedicate yourself to a specific medium.
I hear that. What's something you've taken away from the events you've been to on Airfest this year?
Oh my God, Bianca gave a presentation about how documentary can be a spiritual practice. Wow. And so like it was like this audio craft conversation where she was like citing the Bible and Paul Tillich and like artists that I've never heard of, and this fundamental thesis that there is a spirituality that you can take into the practice of documentary was like truly amazing. And I'm going to be thinking about it forever and bugging her with questions.
I'm having FOMO. That sounds absolutely incredible, and I missed that. Thank you so much, Chioke. I'm saying your name correct? Chioke, I'm sorry. I'm Flo. Thank you so much for being on the format today.
Thank you. Appreciate it, y'all.
Such a good one.
What are your takeaways?
Okay, well, this is the first time I was exposed to the debate in the podcast world around audio or audio and video.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to agree with him. How do you feel about that?
Okay, no, I am like, I see both sides.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Tell me about your opinion.
No, when everyone thinks back to the first podcast they heard many, many years ago, and you have these visuals that you created, or at least I did for myself, right? And these stories that are just told kind of old-fashioned, like radio style. And there's no replacement for that, So I like the element of imagination that solely audio allows for versus video. Yeah, it just doesn't leave as much to the imagination.
So well said. And I think about this all the time. I don't know why I'm obsessed with this dilemma or question, but I'm kind of obsessed with it because I feel really torn, I guess, because I mostly listen. I don't watch. But there are some shows I watch. They tend to be shows that they're podcasts, but it could be a TV show. Like it feels
That's where
like
my head goes.
Like
Yeah.
I sometimes watch Call Her Daddy when she has like big celebrities on. I'll like sit at the couch and like I'll multitask, so I'm not like watching it the whole time, but I like want to see the faces. But then when I listen to Armchair Expert, even if it's a famous guest, I don't want to see it. I like listening. I would say 95% of the podcasts I want to listen. I don't want to watch. But there are some small exceptions that I've made.
It's funny you said that. I just read some news this morning that Netflix is looking into deals with like podcasting space, and the Call Me Daddy woman is one of the primary like talent people that they're looking to make deals with. So I don't know where it's going to go. We'll see. And I think there's completely a space for video for so many things. I just hope that we keep some of our most beloved podcast is audio only.
I know. It's such the annoying part about it is everyone feels really, especially the bigger shows, feel a lot of pressure to do video, even if that's not really their thing. And then I've noticed I don't feel like it's very authentic that they're suddenly doing video, and it just doesn't feel the same.
Were you telling me that YouTube, it's like almost a requirement now just for the algorithm, the way that works, that you do need video elements for subscriptions to go up?
Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. What do you think is the biggest podcast listening platform in the United States?
Okay, my head first goes to Spotify because that's my personal experience, but I wonder if it's YouTube.
It's YouTube by a long shot.
Okay.
So, and that includes podcasts that are audio only, but they have a graphic. But because of the visual TikTok, IG Reels, YouTube Shorts, addicted social media world that we live in, it is very helpful to have video clips with actual people's heads talking from your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do work in video, so I'm all about the medium. I just do notice without a lot of practice, it's scary, even subconsciously for people. If you're not in front of a camera all the time and seeing yourself back, you're going to act differently. It's like less intimate of an environment. But
yeah, I think you're right. I think we should not run away with the fact that video is really popular and remember why podcasting became popular 10, 12 years ago in the first place. And that was because of that opportunity for authenticity through the audio only format. And the imagination element, like when you're reading a book, you're imagining it. I think there must be a similar thing going on with our brain when we listen to a podcast. It's like, you know, you're creating your own version of what you're imagining.
Yeah, that happens for me. So again, we're at both and. And I'm just realizing too, as we're talking, like this applies mainly to interview style. You're not going to have This American Life video. That would take so much production.
It'd be a documentary.
That would be a documentary. Exactly.
That would be a film. That would be a film.
Yeah. Yeah. So it depends on the style of podcast too.
True. So after we had our really great interview with Chioke, we were just standing in the hallway looking around, and there was a huge line, and I was like, I wonder what everybody's lining up for. So I went up to somebody and I asked her, and her name was Melanie, and Melanie was a attendee just for the day of Friday.
Yeah, she was super sweet, and she at first was really wondering what we were doing and what we were going to ask her. And she, just like everyone else there, was very willing. She's like, yeah, sure, let's go for it. So it was cool to get her perspective as someone who's not in that space and someone who's an attendee.
Just came to enjoy. Let's hear. I'm from the format. Tell me your name and what brought you to On Air Fest this year.
Hi, I'm Mel. I don't really have a format, but I'm here to check out Bonnie Bear and Krista Tippett.
Nice. So you don't work in media right now?
I don't. I work in brand strategy and copywriting.
Well, that's very adjacent, I would say.
Yes, it is, for sure. Yeah, creative.
But you love podcasts?
I do. Yeah. They're great. They're fun. You know, you could listen to them while doing stuff.
What's one of the first podcasts that you loved?
It would have been Serial and then On Being close second. So this is a fun one.
It's a big day for you. Were you here yesterday or just today?
I wasn't. I just got here. Yeah, just today.
Let's see. A few rapid fire questions. If you had to pick between fictional podcasts like narrative, like Serial, or interview shows like, you know, any interview show, which would you pick?
Ooh, that's hard. I don't think I could pick. There's a lot of interview style ones. It's cool to see more fictional.
Or maybe fictional.
Yeah, I think so. Hard to pick.
Yeah. Audio only or video and audio?
Ooh, why not? Both.
Yeah. Famous host or unknown host?
Unknown if they're great. They were all unknown before famous, so that would be cool.
Murder mystery or comedy?
Comedy.
Okay. I think we're good. Thank you so much.
No worries.
And what are you in line for right now?
Good question. What am I in line for right now? 1 o'clock. Closed captions, Radiolab.
Okay. Yeah, Radiolab. I wasn't planning to go, but then after she reminded me, I was like, let's go. And it was so cool.
It was so cool. That was my favorite session.
To set it up, the whole presentation by Simon live was wild. It was the backstory of how closed captions were created 40 or 50 years ago with real life people coming up with language to talk to computers to create the right captions. And then they had those people with that special captioning skill performing it live.
Hillary Clinton became Hilco. Barack Obama became Bombo. Rudy Giuliani at the time was Free Jew.
Question mark. That is too many syllables.
Again, Meredith Patterson.
I trained the system every time I said COVID, it would print the question mark symbol.
And it was wild.
It was,
and
yeah, they did such a good job. He did such a good job, everyone who produced that, to tell it in a way that brought it to life, I thought. Having people on stage who were doing the closed captioning and showing how it's evolved over time. And it's just like one of those things of double clicking into something that I never thought twice about, and how complicated and involved something like that is. So that's just cool. There's a story everywhere, right? If you like.
Yeah. So if that episode is out yet, I will link to it. But
Cool.
he only did a 15 or 20-minute presentation about this story, and he opened it with a personal anecdote about how he stumbled upon the curious thought of who makes the closed captions on the news that are live, and then took us down a rabbit hole of discovery that he went on. But in the actual episode, we'll find out that it's going to start a different way. And we were at one of the happy hours, and he was presenting his interactive art experience called
Windstar Solutions.
Windstar Solutions. We have a tour of that.
Yeah. And for anyone who doesn't know who Simon is, he has been a longtime producer for Radiolab. He also was a fellow on This American Life, so been at NPR for a long time, and just a really down-to-earth, fun guy to talk to. And this whole Windstar Labs things is just a side project of his. So it was a cool example to me of someone who's in the professional world, but also spending time on creating their own side projects to put out in there in the world.
Yes. Now I listen to Radiolab and I hear him, and I'm like, I know him.
Yeah, we know Simon.
Cool. All right, here we go. Let's listen.
Do you want me to look at you or at that?
We can do both.
Okay,
We'll do like a little brief interview.
great.
I'm Florence. I have a podcast about podcasting called The Format.
Nice.
And we are here with, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Simon Adler. I'm a senior producer at WNYC's Radiolab.
Very cool. So today you presented a very cool live episode
Yes?
of Radiolab
Yes?
about closed captions.
Yes.
And you opened the episode with a very relatable situation. You were at home with your parents, bored, watching the news in your boring hometown, thinking about very little. And that, I think, probably inspired you to notice things you maybe have never noticed before.
Sure, that's probably right. Yeah, boredom is an important sort of antecedent to inspiration. Sure, yeah.
And I think the rest of the story about this journey you went down to figure out how closed captions have been made for the last 40 years, or how long has it been?
1981 or 1982 was the first year that they live closed captioned television. Yep.
Was fascinating, and just a really cool story of a lesser known phenomenon that we take for granted. And now with AI, we maybe take it even more for granted.
Yep.
How did you decide to start that piece with that story about being at home with your parents? Was that just natural, or did you think about how to start the piece? And
Yeah, the biggest thing was, okay, that we have 15 minutes. And so we need to have a very quick pop that gets us in. And there is a whole, eventually it'll come out as a radio piece, and there's a very different top that we'll be using for that. But it felt like in a live setting, this is an easy way for me to tell a quick personal story that launches us into it. Plus you get to tell a joke at the top, and it's visual with the news broadcast. So those are some of the thoughts we were considering as we put it together.
Well, I loved it. I'm surprised to hear that they're going to change it for the more permanent version. What will they do with the opening then? Do you know?
Yeah, what we'll do is, so one of the big events that led to sort of closed captioning exploding on the scene was this series of protests that happened at Gallaudet University. Gallaudet at the time was the only liberal arts college for those who were deaf or hearing impaired. And there were a bunch of protests that broke out there. Okay. They were covered by the national news. And that became that was going on at the same time as sort of disability rights generally was coming to the fore. And so it's a lovely little anecdote at the top, and we've spoken to people who were there and who were involved with it. And you just have more space to sort of spread out and create this cinematic moment of all of these students rising up in a way that we just didn't have time in 15 minutes for a stage show.
And that that's really the reason why closed captioning came to be, is because it was part of the disability rights movement.
Yeah, it's complicated, obviously, more complicated than like the Radiolab story will even tell it to be. But yeah, a big part of it was in the 80s, along with a bunch of technological advances, you had this push. You effectively have like the Americans with Disabilities Act coming out. By 96, the Telecommunications Act, they were able to get in there that anything made basically after the year 2000 was going to have to be closed captioned. So there was all sorts of stuff that was happening, but this was a sort of like media flashpoint. These students erupting on campus saying, you just hired a president of the university who's hearing. We told you don't do that. Okay. We're going to shut the university down until you get a president who experiences the world the way we experience the world. So,
was it a moment in the news that led to closed captions being created, or not really? Were they just sort of happening at the same time?
It was definitely part of it, because the thing, and now we're really getting into the history, but basically...
What's the correlation?
Yeah, no, it's a real connection, because like, especially like, nothing's terrestrially broadcast anymore, so this is no longer the case. But at the beginning, you needed to have a decoder box to be able to decode the closed captioning information being broadcast. Those were expensive, and they were like add-ons to the television. Effectively, due to the Gallaudet protests, George H.W. Bush signed a law that required that all new televisions be made with a decoder built into them. And so once that happened, suddenly the price like bottomed out. Everybody had access to these things. Once everybody in the deaf and hard of hearing community had access to these things, demand went through the roof. As demand goes through the roof, now suddenly we need to provide greater supply. So yes, there's a pretty straight line you can draw there.
Cool. Well, it's a story I had never heard before.
Right, yeah.
And I love hearing how the different formats, you know, the live 15-minute version versus the longer, maybe audio-only version, how you guys are approaching that, and it makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Absolutely.
I feel like I learned something.
Excellent. Great. That's what we're trying to do.
There was all that history that he shared with us that's going to be in the longer version that was not in the shorter version, and it was cool that just kind of get an insight into how they edit the story based on the length of time that they have.
Yeah, I know. That's what I picked up on too, is I honestly forgot it was 15 minutes until we're listening back to it. It made such an impact on me from being that short. Mm-hmm. And obviously a lot of planning has to go into making something that impactful that's only lasting 15 minutes. So it's cool to hear.
They went fast. You could feel it.
They did. Yeah.
It was light speed.
Yeah, you're right. But it kept it exciting too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The pace of it did. Yeah, hearing him talk about like, okay, what's a quick entry point we can use to launch into it? So that's why he chose that personal story of being at his parents and bored and that coming on the news. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to be behind the scenes of some of these making of these podcasts.
Yeah, I'm thinking of more questions I want to ask him, because my next question is how much of what he, his commentary for these sorts of Radiolab shows are scripted, or how much of it is him riffing on bullet points that he's written down, or because, it sounds so perfect, but it also sounds so natural. So I'd be curious to know if it's scripted.
I know. And if so, how scripted? Like you're saying, is it like down to a play almost, where every line it has to be exact, or do you just have high level bullets you have to hit? And the other thing that was cool about him, and I imagine this is true for any good host or, someone presenting something like he's presenting, is just, he seems so curious.
Yeah.
Like you have to become an expert almost on this thing that you're reporting on. And it just seems like he's a really curious person. So he asks a lot of questions.
Totally. Curiosity is the nature of a journalist, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I love about being a journalist.
What J school did you go to?
What J school did I go to? I did not go to a J school.
Just kidding.
But according to
Under the Table News?
Under the Table News.
Or Under the Desk?
I am a journalist.
Yeah.
I'm going to run with that.
Yeah.
All right. Next clip we have Max. And I'm pretty familiar with StoryCorps. They work with the U.S. government collecting stories around the country. And I'll admit I haven't listened to many pieces of theirs lately, but I'm familiar with the company. And they actually do a project that I'm more familiar with, where they had cross-political line conversations
Cool.
around the election.
I was really intrigued to hear that. I'm such a storytelling nerd, but I had never heard of StoryCorps before. So I looked it up after, and yeah, it just made me happy that that exists out in the world. I'm like, oh, you're just a collector of stories? That's amazing.
Yes, yeah, because one thing we didn't introduce about Lauren was that you love to participate in a local storytelling group called The Monty.
I do. Yep. It's one of my favorite things in life.
And they have a podcast, right?
Oh my gosh, Flo, that's a great question. They video everything, so you can access the videos. I don't know if he does a podcast. I'm going to ask him.
Definitely have YouTube, because I watched your YouTube video.
Yes, about dating the magician.
So yeah, the project that StoryCorps does that I'm the most familiar with is called One Small Step, where they bring together strangers with different political views to record a 50-minute conversation, not to debate politics, but to learn who we are as people. It's really powerful. So that's probably the thing that I'm most into that they do.
Yeah, I need to check more of their stuff out. Max, let's see, he's been working with them for a few years, he was saying. And he's an audio producer, journalist, artist. We connected on the fact that he is born and raised in Alaska. And I love Alaska. And he has a penchant for weird topics and emotionally complex stories. And it looks like he does his own work on the side, too. Seems like a theme for a lot of these folks.
Yeah, really cool. Let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah.
I'm Flo Lumsden, and I'm interviewing other producers and podcast enthusiasts. Would you like to introduce yourself, your name, and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Max Jungreis. I'm a producer for StoryCorps.
For StoryCorps.
Yeah.
One of my favorite companies in DC, right?
We're kind of all around the country. So we're technically based in New York here, actually, but we have a remote team that's based around the country. I myself actually work out of Portland, Maine.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's a great city.
It's a really cool place, yeah.
Never been, but I've run there. Anyway, moving back to the topics at hand. So you are a producer, and tell us a little bit about what that entails and what you love about it.
Yeah, so my job is basically to find people who have interesting stories and or interesting relationships from around the country and bring them in for a conversation that I then turn into narrative audio. We are trying to capture people from all walks of life. So I've recorded people, in Texas, in Alaska, even in Ohio, right? Because I'm trying to really capture all kinds of people from all walks of life. The key to it is that we will just interview people by themselves, but the core of it is really about a conversation for us, a conversation between a person and another person, not you, two people who the story is about. And that's something that can be really difficult because there's no way to Google a relationship. I've worked in a variety of mediums, and finding an interesting story is one thing. Finding an interesting person is one thing. Finding an interesting person who's good on tape is one thing.
Another thing, yeah.
But then but then calling them and being is there someone who's important to you? Or finding a story where it's clear these two people would matter to each other and they'd have something to talk about.
Okay.
You can't Google that.
Right.
Right? So that's part of the thing that makes the format really tricky. But the thing that's really rewarding about it is that because these are conversations between people who have some kind of pre-existing relationship, they are some of the most emotionally impacting stories that I've ever listened to. I was a little torn on whether or not I should apply to StoryCorps at the time that I did, because there were just certain logistical things about it where I was I don't know if this could work out for me. But I was going through the website and I was listening to stories, and there was one story in particular that I had to put down my headphones and take a walk after I listened to it because I was so emotionally impacted. It was a story between a mother and a son, and the things that they said in the interview hit me so hard. I literally had to go for a walk and just think about other things for a while. And after that, I was I would like to work for a place that makes stuff that hits me that hard. So for me, the thing that's really cool, it's partly finding stories, finding interesting things, and the fact that you can you can kind of do a story about almost anything. But then the fact that a lot of it is about navigating these emotions, and you are thinking about, in every story, you're thinking about how these emotions are hitting the listeners and what these people are going through, that's part of what's really cool for me.
Is there a theme of stories that you produce, or are they any human interest story?
I do weird stories.
Okay.
So like technically like there's like people at StoryCorps specialize in their own little things. So like I will do a lot of stories from Alaska because I'm from Alaska, but then also like I will come up with weird pitches. And that's just part of how I like doing things, because I think that having like a good weird premise is a good way to hook people in before you give them whatever the story's really about. Because like a lot of what we do is slice of life, but if there's something a little weird about these stories up top, that can help hook people in. Like I did a story about, I did a story with a woman named Denise Toot, who was a volunteer at the Lesbian Switchboard in the 70s. And this was like a phone line where you could call it, and there would be a trained lesbian on the other end of the line who would answer your questions, like whatever question you had, like, is there anything wrong with me? Or where are the best gay bars, right?
Yeah.
And that story
Like
really...
welcoming you to the gay community.
Yeah, and that's kind of like a weird premise. But really, like Denise came in, and the things that she talked about was, she talked about volunteering there and the calls that she took and why she did it. But she also talked about like her childhood and coming out and how hard that was for her when she did it in the 60s, right? And what she got from then volunteering at the Lesbian Switchboard. So like there's like a fun premise, but the idea is really that it takes you into something more deep emotionally.
I love that. I think that's a really cool story that I'd like to hear. I mean, I can imagine it's very playful and very deep all at the same time. It's my favorite kind of story. So I think I know. So first of all, it's only audio? You don't do video interviews?
No. So we have animations, which are also really cool. But no, we're audio based.
Do you go there in person to interview them?
Depends on the interview. I did one the day before yesterday in person. That depends on how close they are to me.
Okay.
If they're like up in Alaska and I'm in Maine, I'll get a studio. I do that remotely. Or sometimes we have a huge number of people, because we are we're associated with the Library of Congress, and we're an oral history organization, so we collect interviews from all over the country. So we have an entire department who are just dedicated to traveling around and asking people to come in and record with them who want to. Not even necessarily for stories, just anyone, because we'll archive all of it.
That's cool.
And those people are called facilitators, aka facils, and they're a huge help because sometimes they're in the area or they will travel for us. And they'll basically go and do a tape sync for us, and they'll set up the equipment and help us out.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. And make the guests or the folks that are being recorded comfortable and...
Yeah, like they'll conduct the interview on our behalf sometimes, or they'll just like set everything up, and then we'll call in and talk to them. But like we couldn't do our job without them. They're huge.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
I might know the answer, I think, but I don't know. What you do is a little bit of different things. So for podcasting in general, for you as a person, do you prefer audio only or audio and video podcasts?
I mean, I'm primarily audio. Like I like video, but I think that in narrative audio specifically, which is like my niche, you can do those things. It's very hard to do them at the same time.
Right.
So I'm much more of an audio first person.
Okay. My next question is narrative, story, or interview podcast?
Oh, I think that they hit your brain very differently. So I'll listen to, it depends, not every interview podcast is like this, right? But I'm more likely to listen to an interview podcast when I'm at the gym or something, or I'm doing something else where I need to stay occupied. And then I think a narrative audio one, which is closer to what I do, so I'm very in my head about it. That's something that I'll maybe sit down and consume, and I'm like, I need to take in something right now. I mean, I guess I would say narrative because that's what I do.
But you do listen to interview shows.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Comedy or true crime?
Comedy.
What's one thing you've taken away from On Air Fest this year that you were excited to experience or learn?
I think that despite all of the problems that the industry has had over the last year or two, there are still tons and tons of people who want to work in the industry, and they still want to make creative things, and they still love what they do, even if the industry doesn't love them back. And I think that matters because when I started, it was a much smaller industry. It was much newer. And the thing that helped it get to where it got and helped it grow were all these people who were dedicated to it and loved it. And I think that despite all of the problems, so long as there are a core of people like that, that the industry will be okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
I thought of some other fun questions.
Yeah.
What was one of the first podcasts you fell in love with?
It's a great question. I have to really, really think back.
Or that made you think, oh, what is this new medium?
The way I got started was that someone was involved. There was like a public radio organization locally, and they came into my middle school, high school, and they were there to help us record birds for a science class. And I got involved through them, and that's when I started listening. So I think when I started, it was a lot smaller. It was really like This American Life, Snap Judgment, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I think that one of the, I think that I could name off some of like my all-time favorite things. There's an episode of Radiolab called Unraveling Bolero, which I highly recommend. That's a story that I think was very influential on my sense of structure, but also making me want to do story more. Cool. I think the Reply All in its heyday was a big deal for me, but I just also think that listening to This American Life every week was a big deal for me. This is not an original,
Okay.
but not original, but like this is how it started, I think, for a lot of people.
A lot of people say mine is Serial, and a lot of people say Serial first season. So
there you go.
You like what you like, you're inspired, A host that's well known or famous, or a host that no one has ever heard before. If you had to choose one.
Like for me to listen to?
Yeah. Would you rather a celebrity host or an anonymous host that's good?
Oh, anonymous host.
Okay.
We're talking about like having a famous person host a podcast?
Yeah, like regardless of the quality of the episode, would you rather a famous person that you're familiar with or someone you've never heard of before?
Someone I've never heard of before. I think like maybe the best host is maybe one that, they're not famous outside of the podcast, but you've listened a few times and you kind of know their rhythms and motions. But I think, I think that's what I prefer.
Any favorite hosts that you feel really close to, even though you maybe aren't friends with them?
I don't think I should say that.
I have mine as Jack Shepard. I just feel like I know him, but I don't know him, and it would be a weird interaction for us if we ever meet, because I'd be like, we're best friends, and he'd be like, I don't know who you are.
I've never actually talked with Alex Goldman, but I always loved the energy that Alex Goldman brought to Reply All. I think that one of the cool things about that podcast was the way in which it was not just stories. You felt like you were hanging out with them. And I've always just really appreciated his energy and sense of humor.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matt.
Of course.
So great to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you.
So much good stuff in there.
There really was. I'm sure it was cool to watch you guys too, because you have similar-ish jobs. He's a producer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so just to hear some of y'all's favorite things, like talking back and forth about those. And my favorite thing, he said some funny stuff in there, but I love how his through line is weirdness.
Yes. Yes. On second listen, I noticed that as well. Like looking for quirky little things in society or in stories that can entertain and delight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. What did I love about that conversation?
The lesbian hotline.
That was my favorite part. But I also appreciated him talk about how hard it is to find two people that know each other that are going to be like good storytellers, You
can't Google it.
Can't Google it. You have to go searching.
It's one thing in life, one of those things in life that you can't just like ask AI.
Mm-hmm.
So have to have some humans behind it.
I believe so. Yeah, especially if you want to find, unknown stories, never before heard.
Yeah. I really like that idea of like going out there and digging for those interesting stories that are worth telling. And yeah.
I could see you doing that.
I know. I looked up their job board. I was like, this sounds really cool.
Good.
Yeah.
And another thing about you, Lauren, is you are a very curious person.
And I love people. I do
You
love people and their stories.
Yeah. So this whole maybe journalism thing could be something for you, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Storytelling, journalism, whatever you want to call it.
Do I have to go to J school?
Yes, you have to go to J school. I'd say it costs $150,000 and no one will hire you because of it, but
you need it.
But you need it.
Yeah. Okay, well, never mind.
Well, this has been so fun. My only regret is that we didn't interview more people, but we got some amazing interviews done just in that one day, Friday. So
we did. I know. And next year we'll get even more. And I don't remember if we already mentioned this, but you know who we have to give a plug to on this?
Who?
Our bestie friend. Speaking of weird, I didn't know who he was. And then now he is my new favorite comedian and musician. So
Reggie Watts. We didn't get an interview with him, but I went up to him and I don't even know, he's fairly well known. In my world, he's famous because I'm kind of a fan,
Yeah.
But he's not super duper famous, I guess. But, he's someone I would be kind of nervous to talk to, I guess. But he made me feel like we'd known each other for years. Like, I couldn't have felt more relaxed in someone's presence that I didn't know. I don't think I've ever felt so relaxed in someone's presence. And then when I watch his content, his music and his comedy and his performances, it also makes me feel so relaxed and happy and just free, because I think inside I'm a very strange little dancing artist, and I'd love to share that more with the world. And I feel like we are birds of a feather, me and Reggie Watts, and he hung out with us and danced with us at the party.
Yeah.
And it was just a complete joy.
I know. Anybody who wants to get their inner weirdness, some inspiration there, Flo, like you're saying, of wanting to put things out there that are a little on the edge, a little different. Definitely check him out. He's so original, hilarious, disarming, there's something about him that's very freeing to watch that I really appreciate. And it's
just like a pure person. He's just coming to you with no filter, and that's how it really truly feels. And it was cool to meet him and befriend him in person, and then have a whole new appreciation for him as an artist. Because it's all there. It's all there.
I know. It's not fake.
Not fake.
Yeah.
No.
What you see in real life is also what you're seeing on his videos. And I get to see him in Durham. He's coming. I'm so excited.
I feel like we could deepen our relationship.
I know. I'll try to do it through you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for recording this with me, Lauren. Let's to more adventures soon to come.
Yes, to more podcast adventures to come, for sure.
Thank you for listening to The Format. Head to substack.com, that's substack.com, to subscribe to The Format on Substack for our next monthly episode and blog about the future of podcasting. Stay real.
Hey, it's Flo. Are you or your business thinking about starting a podcast? Head to our website at chorus-studios.com and fill out the contact form to start a conversation.